Bienvenue à tous, merci de votre participation. Pour écouter notre session en français, veuillez cliquer en bas de votre écran sur l'onglet « Interprétation » et sélectionner le drapeau français. Merci.
On behalf of ICLEI Africa, the African Center for Cities, Our Future Cities, Surge Africa, and the Red Cross Crescent Climate Center, we are delighted to welcome you to the Rise Africa 2024 Action Festival. Rise Africa is a platform that brings together thinkers, doers, and enablers to inspire action for sustainable cities. This is our 4th edition of our Rise Africa Action Festival, which brings together insights, practices, and visions from across the continent under this year's theme of Solutions Only, Failures Also. This year's theme provokes us to change the way we view our cities and approach their development, particularly to promote a solutions orientation to our worldview. The festival invites you to embrace different ways of knowing, to seek ways to bridge science, policy, business, and arts in creative ways. It invites you to forge new partnerships, experiment with new concepts and ideas, and drive change in your homes and communities. This year's festival, we are running a social media storm to share how urbanization is happening in Africa, that cities can be centers of possibility, and how we can inspire action for sustainable African cities. Please share these for the days of the festival, including Africa Day, the 25th of May. As is tradition, we invite you to enter this session in a spirit of creativity.
يطيب العيش هنا في إفريقية بالهدوء والسلام والرفاهية، وفي قارة الخيرات السبع الكل ينام متعبا من الشبع، لا فقر لا عنف ولا جوع، لا ظلم لا قهر ولا دموع. نحتفي بالتنوع والتعددية، نزرع بذور التسامح ونقطع جذور العنصرية. يطيب العيش هنا في إفريقية حيث العدل والمساواة والسلمية، وقوانين وسياسات وأنظمة ديمقراطية ومشاريع تحفيزية، والحب والسعادة والحرية. ننعم بثرواتنا الطبيعية ونعالج المشاكل المناخية. كم يطيب العيش هنا في إفريقية. سمعت صوتا يقول هذه الحكاية، لا أدري إن كانت هذه النهاية لحلم راودني أثناء النوم، أو ربما هو صوت من غد أفضل، وهذه البداية لحلم يتحقق مع أحفاد اليوم. ولا أدري ما الذي يجب أن نفعله نحن الآن ليطيب العيش في إفريقية، وكي لا نعود إلى زمن الخوف والاستبدادية، ونتخلص من مهرجي الشعبوية ومطبلي النظام والدكتاتورية.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Haba. I'm an urban researcher for the Shorter Cities Institute, a nonprofit that's dedicated to creating the ecosystem for shorter cities with the aim to lift tens of millions of people out of poverty. I've been coming to Rise Africa Action Festival for the past 2 years, presenting different sessions. My main focus in my research is always African cities, so I've been presenting on that. This year, actually, theme had inspired me to do this session, which is going to be a little bit different of what I usually do. So this year, as we know, theme is Solutions Only, Failures Also. I've recently have relocated to Zanzibar. I live in one of the new developments, the new towns here called Fumba Town. And 15 minutes or like 10-minute drive away from me is another new development called Fumba Up Town. The two towns have been designed with very different approaches, and that of course affects the lived experiences of the people that live in them. the two towns have been created as a response for the increase in population and also the increase and the rise of the African middle class. Again, very different cities, 15 minutes away from each other, holding the same constant geographical influence. So let's see how design can create the solution, but also can create a failure. Let's go. Hi, so I know that I said Zanzibar and we all expect sunny beaches, but it is the rainy season as I'm shooting this, and today it's raining all day long. But that's not gonna stop us, we're still gonna shoot our video. So, alright, so this is Fumba Town, this is the entrance to Fumba Town. Right on our right here, there is what they call the pavilion. And inside the pavilion, there are a number of stores. There is a supermarket, there is a liquor store, there is even an urban care center that you can go to check on yourself, make sure you're healthy, all these kind of good things. And upstairs there are other businesses as well. So this is practically the first thing that you see coming into Fumba Town. So let's go inside and see what other cool things we can find. Okay, so I'm walking now into Fumba Town. You can see there is a huge amount of greenery everywhere, which I like. I will not take this main road, I will take a side road that I think is cooler, and yeah, we can check the town through it. So one thing that we can see right away as I'm stepping into the side road is that while the main road has concrete, the side roads don't, and they are actually made of more natural materials that can be found all around the island, which I think is pretty cool. So yeah, this is the side road. It's a pretty cool place. It's raining still, like I can feel the rain, but it's much better. And when it's sunny, which is almost all of the year, it's a great way to walk without having been exposed completely to the sun. It also provides all the townhouses around with a little bit of privacy, which I think is also another cool thing, that you can kind of like feel like you're living in nature, but also having kind of like your own space. Okay, so let's go to this place, which I really like, is the Zen garden here. The Zen garden is, well, I call it the Zen garden. I don't know what people call it here, but it's a very beautiful place that you can chill. You can, I don't know if you guys can hear the sound of the frogs. There's so many frogs here, and there are also a number of other beautiful creatures that you can find. Yeah, so this is practically how most of the town looks like. Very nature-based, a very cool blend of greenery as well. So not just a certain type of trees, just very different types of trees that come together and create a very nature-filled experience. Okay, so now we're gonna go into the first roundabout, and this is kind of, I'm filming this around lunchtime, and we'll see how people are doing around lunchtime. So yeah, another cool thing in the town is that a lot of people can use their bicycles to get around. So that's cool. So yeah, so this is lunch. This is Kweno Play, and you can see the community coming together around lunchtime, having lunch under this beautiful tent. and that I think is also pretty cool. So right next to this little restaurant where a lot of people are having lunch or bringing their lunch and sitting close to the restaurant is this beautifully designed playground. It's a bit different from traditional playgrounds. It doesn't have like the normal slide or the normal swing. It just has like more adventurous kind of play. So yeah, people can sit here, be protected from the rain or the sun while their kids play in the backyard or the playground. And yeah, you can see that also there is a huge tree here that also protects kids from the sun. I promise you there is a lot of sun. Yeah, and it's a pretty cool place. The only downside I would say to this place is that when kids are playing, they're extremely loud. But I guess it's okay. Yeah, so this is another cool feature. Another cool place right across from the playground we looked at earlier is the town library. So yeah, let's go inside the library. It's midday, so I don't expect a lot of people to be there, but it would be cool to check it out. Okay, so we're right in front of the library, and we have to take our shoes off, clean it a bit, and then let's go inside. So yeah, the library is pretty cool, very chill. You can find books from everywhere. But what I love about the library is this kids corner. I see a lot of kids kind of like hanging out here after school. There are many kids yeah, coming here after school, and there's also really cool places where you can just like come here and work, and you see some people are doing some stuff. Yeah, this is another cool place. So now I showed you the Fumba Town that's on this side, right? And we talked about the pavilion a little bit that's on this side. But there is a little hidden gem which I really like that's on the other side, so behind the pavilion. Yeah, so I'll go there with you guys and yeah, I'll show it to you. So yeah, after a bit of walking, around 5 minutes, again in the rain, it's a rainy day, we arrive here at Franco's shop. Yeah, let's go inside and I'll show you what it is and what they do here. Okay, so going inside, you see all of those different plants that you can purchase. So this is a company that is practically in charge of all the permaculture that happens within Fumba Town. And this is their champa, and you can come here, buy any type of plants that there is. And this is here where they do also their, I mean not here, a little bit up in the office, you can't see it right now, but this is where they do the research on what plants to use, how to use them, how do plants interact with each other, how to keep the plants year round, what is best for the ecosystem, all this kind of things. So this is a pretty cool place when it's not raining. You can come maybe chill here or chill upstairs, buy some plants and just have an all good time. So this is kind of the last secret or the last hidden space of Fumba Town. And yeah, let's roll. And another cool thing is this permaculture plan they have, which shows how they're thinking about waste management, the composting areas, the education and events that they're trying to create. Here is a plant list and how all the plants are coming together to serve a better ecosystem. It's pretty cool. So yeah, I just finished the tour for you guys. I'm at a friend's place. I'm here for my Swahili lesson. So I'm gonna do that and then I'm gonna move to Fumba Up Town so we can get to know how living areas. And my muallim was here. So yeah, I'll see you there. Okay, so my ride is here, and now we're gonna head to Fumba Up Town. Yeah, see you guys there. I just arrived in Fumba Up Town, and yeah, this is how it looks like. The typology of the housing is quite different from Fumba Town. So Fumba Town has more diversity in the typology. It is all more high-end villas. Looking good anyways. And the second thing that you notice right away is also the difference in greenery. So here the greenery is kind of less well kept, and most of there's not a lot of also diversity in the type of trees. So they're mostly palm trees, which I'm not really sure how they work with this environment. The third thing that you can see is the infrastructure. So we can keep walking, but mostly the whole town is asphalt and concrete. So it's all been laid out. There are of course more infrastructure here, so you can see the street lights, which somewhat are missing in Fumba Town. There are residents that moved in here, and that's why we don't really see anyone in the streets. It might be also the rain, obviously, but yeah, there's very little to no people here. It does have a nice view of the sea right here, or the ocean, which we're gonna check out later. Yeah, so I arrived into one of the cooler spaces here, which is this boulevard area. Again, not super well kept. We can see the greenery coming out of the concrete slabs. You know, if the greenery wants to exist, it will exist. It has these pergolas, but of course no one is using them in this weather or generally. And it has a somewhat decent view of the sea right here. Yeah. Great view of the sea, to be honest. Yeah, just so you guys know. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to access one of the roads between the buildings right here, to see what is the vibe, how we're feeling when we're walking. Yeah, so come with me. Okay, I was trying to cross the thing and I completely got drenched into this. So yep, I'm keeping sane. So yeah, we're crossing those really big streets. I'm trying to get to the other side. I'm not really sure how, except through maybe getting through this. Okay, I'm good. Alright, so we have this nice looking modern is buildings around. And yeah, this is where I was trying to go. So I was trying to go between the buildings, but apparently there is an outgrown of greenery, so I'm not really sure. Oh yeah, there is a little bit of a sidewalk. So let's go there and see the rest of the development. Yeah, okay, so there is a nice sidewalk here. Obviously this is not kept very well. That's why it's a bit overgrown. I don't think that was their initial idea. of having things that overgrown, but anyhow. Okay, so I made it to the end of the road, and yeah, more really nice buildings, very interestingly designed, very well designed actually. Yeah, if you live here, I guess you have a nice view of the sea. And oh, there is a car here, great. And Khalifa here. And yeah, some more buildings. We can keep doing this for a while, honestly. There are a couple of places that look like people have moved in. Yeah, the cars are there. So, yeah, good sign. Okay, I'm still walking. There seem to be a couple of people in those buildings that have moved in. Again, my legs are completely drenched here. Yeah, it's complete. It's okay, it's okay. Yeah. Okay, so this area of the waterfront is less kept than the area that we saw. Maybe they're doing some renovations. Been walking around for a while trying to find any restaurants or any coffee shops or anything. None. It's a huge space though, and I think they're still building here. Yeah, so I don't know, I wish there was more to show you guys, but there are not. I think I'm gonna go back home now, and I'll see you there, and we can discuss all of what we've seen today. Yeah, we're leaving Fumba Up Town now. We're going back to Fumba Town. Yeah, well, thank you everyone for joining. I'll just reintroduce myself very quickly. My name is Heba. I am an urban researcher at the Shorter Cities Institute. Um, and yeah, as I said at the beginning of the video, the theme this year was quite inspirational to me to produce this. This is the first time I tried something like this, but I thought, um, yeah, it would be cool to share kind of a lived experience without having to complicate things too hard or put huge urban planning words and everything. Um, Again, those two towns are 15-minute drive from each other. Uh, yeah, so now I'm gonna also do a quick presentation on New cities in Africa. But as I'm going through this, please, whatever question that comes in mind, send it into the chat. And after this, we're gonna have an open session where you guys can unmute yourselves and just yeah, share whatever comes into your mind. I'm just gonna ask you if you can see the PowerPoint right now.
Yes, we can.
Yes. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I called this session The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly of New Towns in Africa, because The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is one of my all-time favorite Westerners. Um, the whole idea of the session that we wanted to do is to actually do like a live session where I actually walk and show everyone, and we could interact. But with the recent kind of East Africa internet issues, we were like, okay, let's record it. I think that would be more safe, and I think we kind of made the right decision. Yeah, as I said, the two cities are new towns or new cities in Africa. But I also wanted us to kind of like look together on like the history of new cities in Africa. And one really cool example I always use is Benin City, which had um, really cool infrastructure. Um, they had great connections to the nearby villages. It started off as a city, but of course developed into one of the greatest empires in East Africa. One of the researches was done on the remains of Benin City, discovered that there is practical, uh, very strict grid and fractional urbanism, and it's one of the earliest examples of street lighting that happened not just in the continent but all over the world. Kilwa Kiswani, which is also in Tanzania, is another great example of medieval city-states that kind of existed kind of all next to each other. So Zanzibar was there, Mafia was there, Kilwa was there, and they all trade with each other. Now it's mostly an archaeological site and a small village, but at its height, it was one of the biggest trading spots in all over East Africa. Um, Also, if you go way back in time and you go look at Alexandria um, in North Africa, you also find a city that is kind of very well planned, very very well thought out, the function that existed within the city, and um, the businesses and the yeah, different ministries that were there and different functions. Um, if we look at colonial city making, which I don't want to talk too much on it, but we can look at places like Nairobi, or we can look at places like Lusaka, again, cities that were designed from scratch, that were quite segregated from each other. We know for sure that in Lusaka, up till 1946, the natives were not allowed to be in the city without passports. And their movement were quite restricted. And again, Lusaka was planned on garden city principles, which is huge streets for cars, many trees, private lawn, private backyards, and yeah. And now you look at the city, and it looks quite different from where it started. Yeah, so we see a huge history of segregation and exclusion in how colonial powers planned the cities all over Africa. But you see another movement for new cities in Africa, and it's practically in the 1960s. So once colonization kind of like left the country, all of those post-colonial leaders wanted to have a special manifestation of the freedom movements, of the newly found independence, of the newly found countries that they were ruling over. One of the more well-known examples is Abuja in Nigeria, that was founded as a reconciliation between North and South of Nigeria. I apologize. And yeah, it was again built on modernist ideas of how cities were being built at this point. So huge high lanes, cars and whatnot. And then another wave of new cities came in the 1980s with again another push towards industrialization, a push towards the rise of the middle class. So there was kind of a response to that in certain African cities. The 10th of Ramadan is a very well-known industrial city in North Egypt, and yeah, in North Egypt. Kalimbila as well is a new city outside of the capital of Angola. And Sheikh Zayed in Egypt is another city that exists. We can see that the planning of the three places are quite different. So if you go back to the 10th of Ramadan, we found it quite like Kalimbila New City has this kind of like socialist designs with the big streets and Pattern Pow looking socialist buildings. Sheikh Zayed has more of like an American suburb design, where it's again all those cul-de-sacs and all the private houses. We all know Konza New City in Kenya, which has more of like a futuristic kind of approach to city making with renders that looks kind of like Dubai, Singapore, all those kind of things. Now we went to two less well-known examples, which is Fumba Town and Fumba. I've been fascinated with those two examples since I moved here. The first time I visited Fumba as well, it was great sharing it with everyone. And as I said, what I try to do is just like share kind of like the lived experience, like how do you walk, where do people do things, how do you cross the street. Yeah, like how does urban planning practically affect our everyday life? We know that over 2 billion people are gonna be added to the world population by 2050, um, or to the urban world population by 2050, and we know that 90% of that urbanization will be happening in African and Asian cities, which leaves the main challenge for the cities is how to plan for an effectively accommodate rapid urban growth. Where all those people are going to go? All of our current cities are facing many challenges and many problems. And as we keep adding more and more people into them, it is a question of how we can accommodate them is becoming more and more urgent for us to answer as planners and as urban activists from all over the continent. Um, yeah, so one of the solutions that's been proposed is it's practically new cities, or as the government in Kenya calls them, secondary cities, or in Malawi they're also called secondary cities, as a policy solution to address rapid urbanization. Um, but it remains a question of whether we're actually able to get those new cities right. This is a lot of infrastructure, this is a lot of investment, mostly private sector led, a lot through public-private partnerships. But yeah, time will only tell if they can actually function on the long run, if they can provide the rising middle class of what they need, if they can answer affordability problems. And I'm gonna stop here and just kind of open the floor to either questions or um, yeah, uh, yeah, any examples. So I saw one question is why was the recording stopped? Oh, the recording of the session. I don't know. I think someone else can answer this question.
Thanks,
Recording.
Heba. Just to answer you, Rainia, the session is being recorded on the cloud. I'm not so sure if, yeah, it's not recording from your end, but from our end, it's recording and we'll share it after. Thanks, Heba. That was a more technical question.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I have. Okay, so another question is, why did you choose photography or videography to tell the story of the cities rather than PPT? And how do you see this affecting the future of urban research? Okay, yeah, good question. I also asked myself this question. So I wanted to kind of like reflect more the experience of actually like not living, because you can't really capture living unless I get a tremendous I don't know, budget to shoot a movie. That would be great if you guys know anyone. This would be awesome. But I'm not a filmmaker. But the whole idea was to just try to capture the everyday living of everyone. I think my problem and how do I see how do I see it affect the future of urban planning or urban research. The whole idea for me is that like a lot of the research that's been done in universities in Africa, which is actually not a lot of research, is quite intellectual and is quite focusing on um, the like players or the stakeholders that are kind of leading those developments, and very little conversations are being had on the lived experience of the people in those developments. And I was like, okay, let me just grab my camera, shoot a video, show it to the people, and then we can have a discussion about it rather than just talk about ideas. Let's talk about what's actually happening on the ground, and how it affects everyone. So yeah, that was the whole idea. And hopefully in the future, and I think that's kind of also my main goal of my work, is to kind of like simplify urban research so much. I want the expert to read it and it for them to make sense, and for the expert to be valuable. But I also want the communities to kind of be able to also access the same information. Again, if as urban researchers, we're researching communities first. So if our work is too complicated for them to access, or too complicated for them to read, or too complicated for them to have a discussion about, then what are we really doing? Yes. I see a hand. Solafina, if you wanna just unmute yourself, you can ask the question.
Hi, Eba. I'm Solofina Nekesa. I am trained as an architect, but now an urban sustainability practitioner. And, I've worked in Uganda and currently working in South Africa. So, and to me, I do like the very simple, but very relatable way that you presented this, in the way that, this is how we are experiencing the spaces we're living in. And it's almost, and I think to me, in the two spaces that I'm living in, it's almost like Fumba Up Town has become the go-to way of developing, and here the question is it the go-to way because it can accommodate more people? Is it the go-to way because maybe developers don't know any better? And I think here also the question in comparison in terms of how many people are staying, for example, in how much can Fumba hold compared to Fumba Uptown? And like those are the questions that keep coming to me. But whereas when I look at the experience of staying in, I would choose Fumba because of, easy of access to services. You're working in a space that is beautiful, but then at the same time, very accessible. And it's not, the urban space is not domineering, but it's the environment of staying in that. So when I'm planning, I would choose, when I'm choosing a place to stay, I would choose to stay there. But how come that developers are not using that sort of approach? And I'm asking because it's also a question I'm asking myself, because I stay in Pretoria in South Africa, and Fumba Uptown is the most dominant way of developing. And even complaints are, South Africa is unsafe. So people are trying to protect themselves, but the reality is that the more you're protecting yourself is the more you are sort of creating insecurity in a way by removing people from streets and that sort of thing. So, and maybe people in the session can also help with that in terms of where is the disparity. I want to live in Fumba Town, but what is commonly happening is Fumba Uptown.
Yeah, I have the same question, so I'm not gonna be able to give you an answer. So it was very clear to me when I was relocating here and choosing to live. It was very instantly. So I walked in one day at 12, and it was very sunny. It was extremely sunny. And as I was walking in, I didn't take and this is what I tried to do in the session. I didn't take the main road. I took the side road, and it was like I was covered all the time by greenery, and it was like, oh, this is a little bit better. If anyone been to Zanzibar, lived in Zanzibar, it's again, the weather is actually extremely harsh. At least on me, it's extremely sunny all year long, and that kind of like once I just started walking within greenery, and I was like, oh, this makes sense, right? And currently, from like my experience in the number of months I lived here, there are more people living in Fumba Uptown. There are more renters. The prices, while still not affordable for the average Zandibari, it's still more affordable than Fumba Uptown. You can, buy a two-bedroom here for, I don't know, X amount of money. You can buy the same two bedrooms there for maybe 5 times the price. So it's kind of like market wise, it doesn't make sense economically. Like, what is your return on your investment? What I know for a fact is that for the waterfront that they did, which is actually it has a great access to the sea. They spent around over million USDs on developing the waterfront, which is always empty. I've the many months I've lived there, no one lives there. So yeah, I ask myself the same questions, and I also invite um, the audience to, if you guys have a clue about why this is happening, and while it's very clear what's working and what's not working, yeah, please, yeah, raise your hands. Yeah, so I'll leave the floor now to Mungai. Hope I'm pronounce your name right. So yeah, please unmute yourself and ask whatever question you have.
Yeah, that's correct, Mungai. So I'm actually a law student in Nairobi, but really interested in urban design and issues of sustainable waste management. And I really liked the comparison that you gave between Fumba Town and Fumba Up Town. Just literally the difference speaks for itself. And my question is very similar to Solofina's, and it's more of, of course, the trend in urban design in Africa and around the world is moving towards the Fumba Uptown model. But is it possible to adopt the Fumba Town model at scale? How I mean, and I like that Solofina raised the issue of, or rather the question of, is it because it's the model can accommodate more people? And of course, in the context of rising populations in Africa, I think the question is, how can we adopt sustainable urban design models with more greenery, with more common areas at scale, and a model that can adopt and hold the larger populations. So yeah, I'd be really interested in hearing what you or anyone else in the forum has to say about that.
Yeah, again, as I'm telling everyone, I don't have the answer to all of the questions, right? So please, if you have an opinion or you have a good example that you know, just raise your hand, unmute yourself, or send an answer to any of the questions or your opinion at anything in the chat. This is more sort of as like a discussion where we have kind of questions, where we have kind of like share ideas on how we can do this. I do believe that like one of the things that at least research is doing wrong is focusing more on the negatives of new city developments rather than kind of like the opportunities. And while yeah, completely, I agree that there is still questions of affordability. There's still questions of sustainability of those models. There are, at least on the design side, there are certain things to be admired. And one of the things that we can see is that like the integration of permaculture, and if you like approach it from a way, hey, that makes sense, that looks good, and then you can do research on how to scale it, how to turn it from a town of, let's say, what's 5,000 people to a bigger city, or something that's a bit more sustainable, then yeah, then we can do research about scaling it. But the problem is I do blame research a little bit on like the kind of like negative approach to everything, rather than just researching, like focusing more on the solutions. And that's why I love the theme for the the Right Africa Festival this year, because it was right on point. There are solutions, there are that are happening all over Africa, maybe on a smaller scale, and to do more research on how to scale it. That's the issue. And there are a couple of cool research that's been done, and cool examples that have been done on kind of like fostering affordability, greenery, and sustainability on like smaller neighborhood projects, and general yeah, research has been done on that, specifically in African cities. I will link it by the end of the session, so you guys can also go through it and see if that makes sense or not. So yeah, if anyone has anything to add, please either add it in the chat or just unmute yourselves. This is a very open session. Yeah, I see another question in the chat. So are the two developments aimed at different residential market? And if so, what sort of words are used to promote or describe each of them? Are they promoted as being green, sustainable, modern, premium, safe, etc.? Um, are they aimed at two residential markets? I would say yes and no at the same time. So both of the residential markets that the two developments aim at are a little bit on the higher level of the market. So two places remain um, again not affordable for the everyday Zanzibari. A lot of the people who live here are either Zanzibari that are working maybe in international organizations or are working remotely and um, uh, um, earning in US dollars or earning in I don't know, euros or something, or there is also like a small but very strong expat community that is living in Fumba Town. Um, so it's still outside of the average Zanzibari market. Um, but it's so funny. The first time I went to Fumba Up Town, it just reminded me of Jeddah in Saudi Arabia so much. And I was like, we're in Zanzibar, no one can afford this. Um, and yeah, well, Fumba Up Town is still much more expensive than Fumba Town. They're currently building their first residential tower, uh, but all of the development there, or most of the development there, let's say, is kind of bigger villas with like a front yard, the backyard. Car is very dominant there. You can't go anywhere without a car. Huge parkings on the waterfront, which I think is insane. But yeah, so I would say yes and no to the question. They're both outside of the Zanzibari affordability rates, but one is way more expensive, or at least more expensive than the other. Um, yeah. And what words are they used to promote? So Fumba Town relies a lot on their permaculture, on they use community a lot in how they promote their work. Um, they have a number of coffee shops and places that people come from outside of Fumba Town to just chill for the night or whatever, and they're quite proud of that. So yes, they use green, they use community a lot. They've recently started building or experimenting with houses that are completely made out of timber. So that also added a layer of using the word sustainably. Pumba Uptown, I would say, use more safe, upscale living to describe uh, uh, their developments. Again, we don't have access to how many units have actually been sold in Fumba Uptown. What I know is that Fumba Town itself, what they do is that they wouldn't sell a unit if it's not kind of like 70% of it is sold. So all the apartment buildings they have, 70% of that is already sold. And even the houses, the townhouses, sorry, they're all sold before they are being built. So on that front, it's more sustainable that they sell before building or during building. Yes. Okay.
Heba, I had a question.
Yes, please.
I think one is a reflection on the kind of cities that are being built in Africa nowadays. They seem to target one certain group. And I'm wondering from the video you shared in Fumba, it's a bit hard to see whether there's mixed income dwellings, housing for low income people, or people who don't earn that much. And so I'm wondering if the cities that we're continuing to build are making cities more exclusive. And then the second question, I think, kind of relates to what Blake said in the chat, because I remember seeing a couple of promotional videos from Fumba a few years ago, and it was on YouTube, and it was mostly touted as being it's an entryway for people to get citizenship in the country, because it almost buys you citizenship to invest. So I'm wondering if it's attracting more foreign direct investment, maybe and not so much the local communities. I don't know what's your reflection on that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So I would say for Fumba Town and Fumba Up Town, they're both again extremely exclusive just from the price point. Again, most people who live here, either the Zibaris who are on a US salary or a Euro salary, or we have two ministers who live here, two ministers in Zanzibar. So it's definitely more exclusive than your average development. It's not at all affordable to the average Zanzibaris. And the entryway to citizenship is an interesting thing. Yeah. So apparently, so Fumba Town and Fumba Up Town, they're both located within um, uh, a special economic zone. Um, and within the special economic zone, if you invest more than, I don't remember the number, but if you invest more than X USDs within those special economic zone, you can get a permanent residency here, not citizenship, but residency, I think. Um, but double check me on this. I'm not sure, but from what I understand, is yeah, you can get permanent residency in Zanzibar slash Tanzania if you invest more than X amount of things. So yes, there are some people who are buying to have permanent residency on the island, and they don't have to worry about anything. Another downside I would add to also your question is that a lot of people who like, the cool thing is that like for again, I'm talking about Fumba Town here. The cool thing is that they while they're building, they already have sold the building. So and they're not losing in any of the units that they're actually building. Everything is sold. But the downside of it is that a lot of people sometimes they buy this. So there are a lot of people from Dar that are buying in Fumba as a second kind of summer house, practically, right, or a vacation house. So that would leave the house most year long empty. The unit that I'm staying in right now, I'm also renting from my landlord is from Dar. Um, and again, this was his he had two properties here, and this is his second property, and the other property is kept closed most of the year unless he and his family come in, and this is practically another investment for them. So yes, I agree, it is more exclusive, and that's the negative, or one of the main negative sides of it is the price point still is extremely high, and uh, and yeah, some of the units were, a lot of them are already sold out, or already being bought by a lot of people. They're not occupied year round, even in Fumba, which is somewhat way more alive than Fumba Town. And the third question I think you asked is, are they trying to bring the prices down? So from what I understand is that CBS, so the developers are working on a model called Mashabora. And practically the whole idea is to create a mortgage system within CBS to first off drive the price unit down. So they're developing certain units, and with that they're developing also trying to develop at least a mortgage system that can allow an entry to, I don't know, someone who's living in Stone Town and just want to be away a little bit, or outside of town and want to be away a little bit, or want to find a nicer house in Fumba Town, but is not super, doesn't have the money to buy into the current units. So I know that they're doing some research around that, and I know they're building the new chachais um, are supposed to be more affordable models, but it's still a very limited, uh, very limited part of the um, development. That's the whole development is as it stands currently is not, I would say, definitely not affordable. Um, yeah. Again, if anyone wants to contribute anything, just unmute yourself, talk, or um, yeah, just write in the chat.
I would just like to follow up on, the question of sustainability in urban design. And I'm currently working on a project in, trying to work on solutions to organic waste management in urban cities. So I'd
Yeah.
be really interested in, seeing the research that you mentioned about, sustainable urban design, or anything in particular touching on sustainable waste management in African cities, and a proper model that can be adopted. Yeah.
Yes, I can definitely send a couple of examples if I can find them. I don't want to keep everyone waiting. I think we'll close very soon, but here is my email. So please reach out to me after the session and I can send you a couple of examples
Great.
of research that's been done that I think is pretty cool on smaller examples of more sustainable kind of design and approaches to city making on the continent.
Thank you.
Okay, if we don't have any more questions or no one has any more thoughts, I would kind of like throw this question at you guys, and yeah, maybe in the chat everyone would kind of, if you had the choice, I know they're a bit unaffordable on that level, but if you had the choice, where would you live and why? If you wanna unmute yourself and give me your opinion, or you want to throw it in the chat, this would be cool. And I think after that, we can, close the session. Thank you, Sophina, for sending your contact as well. So yeah, he's working on sustainable waste management at C40, so that's cool. Okay. If we don't have any more questions, last chance, I think we can close the session earlier. And yeah, thank you guys for joining.
Thanks, Eba. All the best.
Perfect. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, Eva.
Thanks, Eba. I've just put in the survey at the end of the document for all the participants to fill out. It's going to take about 2 minutes of your time, so we'd really appreciate to get some feedback from you around how the session was and what insights you learned from it. Thanks so much.
Yes. Please do so we can also improve on this in the future. Thank you, guys.
And thank you, Heba. I will close in 2 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone.